Good morning, everyone. This is another Saturday morning with the Clear Mountain Monastery Dhamma Talks, and we'll be continuing our discussion of the Attaññū Sutta, which is in the Anguttara Nikaya, Book of the Sevens, Sutta number 68. And the focus of our talk today will be on Attaññū, knowing oneself, or what we'll be terming intrapersonal intelligence. So to begin, we'll chant the invocation and blessing and chant to the triple gem. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So this morning, as usual, I'll give some reflections for the first half hour or so, and then it'll be open for people to post questions if you're so inclined, whether it's about our topic for today, intrapersonal intelligence, or if you have another topic which you're contemplating these days, feel free to write that into the chat at any time, and we'll look at those after the first part of the morning. So just a quick recap, a little bit of background on the discourse and the placement of this intrapersonal intelligence within the teaching as a whole. So what this discourse does is the Buddha outlines 7 different types of intelligence, basically Aññā, of knowing, different ways of knowing, which he highlighted as being especially important to cultivate in the Buddhist path. And those are Attaññū, so Dhammic intelligence, Attaññū, or intuitive intelligence, Attaññū, or intrapersonal intelligence. We can also think of it as self-knowledge. Mattaññū, quantitative intelligence, or knowing the measure. Kalaññū, having a sense of temporal intelligence, or having a good sense of time. Parisaññū is social intelligence, knowing groups of people, and interpersonal intelligence, Pugala Paro Paraññū. That's knowing distinctions among people. But as we mentioned, the topic for today will be Attaññū. That's spelled A-T-T-A, Inya, long U. Attaññū, or Attaññūta, the quality of Aññā, of knowing, or the intelligence regarding Atta, or the self. So some people, if you're just coming to Buddhism, one thing which people come across fairly early on in these teachings is the teaching on the 3 characteristics. That is impermanence, the sense of unsatisfactoriness or dukkha, and anatta, or the teachings on not self. And so this plays heavy in people's minds, and you think, oh, didn't the Buddha teach not self? What is this teaching on self-intelligence? What is this teaching on self-knowledge, or intrapersonal? That means within oneself, the knowledge, having a sense and understanding of your own self. How could that possibly play a role in the Buddha's teachings when the teachings are all about self? The Buddha said that the self doesn't exist. So what would be the point of knowing anything about yourself? And this is a bit of a facile and kind of surface understanding of the teachings. Ultimately, and in a very real sense, practically, yes, the Buddha did teach not self. Ajahn often speaks of this as being a not self strategy. So throughout your day or in your meditation, you can just ask yourself, where is there a self? It's a ongoing questioning, an ongoing probing and investigation. Is this self? Basically asking anything about your experience, whether it's this body, whether it's a thought, whether it's a feeling, an emotion, whatever it is, whatever you're feeling, the Buddha asked this question, is this a self? Can you really point to some essential and continuing, perhaps capital A, self? The Hindu concept of Atman is something which the Buddha was intentionally addressing. So the Buddha clearly posited that there's no Atman or enduring soul. But more than being a philosophical postulation or a philosophical point of contention or just a dogma to be taken up, it's really seen as something which you can just look into and wonder about. Is this self? What about this experience or this aspect of my daily life, this aspect of my mind and body is a self? So that's the ongoing investigation that we do. But at the same time, there is a small s self, which does exist, at least on a social level, on a conventional level. So what's your name? Oh, my name is Ajahn Kovilo. What's your name? You say, my name is X. You think about yourself. You have a general sense of, who you are. And there is some validity, to that on a certain level. But it is conventional, and it is, not the whole story. So I'll just read the Buddha's definition of what it means to have this intrapersonal or self-knowledge from the Attaññū Sutta. So, and how is one who has intrapersonal intelligence? How does one have self-knowledge? Here, a practitioner knows of themselves, this is the extent of my faith, this is the extent of my virtue or sila, this is the extent of my learning, sutta, this is the extent of my generosity, this is the extent of my discernment or wisdom, paññā, and this is the extent of my patibbana or eloquence. So when one has knowledge about those six aspects of one's life, these six capacities or skills or domains of the self, then one can be considered as having self-knowledge. So something which is good to be constantly reflecting on when you come across teachings in a Buddhist context, and really for myself, I find it in any context, this is a good question to be asking oneself is, so what? So what is the point of this teaching? What is the practical benefit of reflecting on oneself? What is the practical benefit of having a knowledge of your conventional and working self? And most people, this would be fairly obvious. Maybe before you came to Buddhism, even you might just have of course it makes sense to know thyself. Of course it makes sense. You've got to live with this experience, and it makes sense to have as rounded and as global and as intricate understanding of your habits as possible. And there is a place for that in the Buddhist teachings as well. And we find it highlighted here. Not only here, although the Buddha probably proportionally did speak more about anatta, so about the insight into not self, seeing that ultimately there is no personality that is enduring and is essential to any of us. But it's not just this discourse where he talks about the place and the role of Atta, or of the self. He also talks about, there's a discourse which there's actually a series of them when the Buddha talks about different competencies or attainments, sampada. So there's the attainment or competency regarding self, atta sampada, the competency regarding one's views, having good friendships, having a good capacity for cognitive thought, yoniso manasikara. And these are harbingers, he says. These are the forerunners of the Eightfold Path. So having a well-rounded and kind of mature sense of self makes sense. And again, so what? What is the practical benefit of all these? So we can look at these 6 different domains of self-knowledge, of intrapersonal intelligence, and explore how they might, having a heightened and improved awareness of these realms, would have practical benefit in 3 aspects. So in meditation, in our daily lives, or in our daily schedule, just while we're living our life by ourselves, how we spend our time. And then the 3rd aspect is in our social life. So each of these proficiencies, each of these domains of self-knowledge, that is our faith, our virtue, our learning, our generosity, and our discernment and eloquence. Knowing about these things has practical benefit for our meditation practice, our life by ourselves, and our life with others. One way of just reconciling the teachings on self within the Buddhist canon are, a nice metaphor I've heard is to think of yourself, this provisional self, as being like a weather pattern. Yeah, so you are a weather pattern. You're not, there's no inherent you, there's no Kovilo who is, my level of faith is always at, 6 out of 10, and my level of virtue is always, X out of 100, or my capacity for discernment all the time, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, is always at 5 stars. There's no constant sense of self, but all of us are weather patterns, yeah? So weather in any locality changes from day to day, from month to month, and even, as is disturbing to notice, from year to year, from decade to decade. But for the most part, the weather in the North Pole, the weather patterns at the North Pole are quite a different thing from the weather patterns in Miami. Yeah, even at the same time of year, it's quite a different thing. So you want to get to know your own weather patterns, which, although they change from day to day, they are predictable. You can go to theweatherunderground.com or any modern, forecasting database and see what the weather was like last year and for the last, decade, and you'll have a sense of what the weather might be like this year. You can look at what the weather was like yesterday throughout the day and see, okay, there's a chance that, it might rain because, for the last however many days, 60% of the days have been raining. Or if you're in Ukiah, you say it hasn't rained for the last 3 months, so chances are it's not going to rain today. Similarly, you've got all these data points. So yeah, largely speaking, we're someone who doesn't get angry very quickly, or if we do, it fades away very quickly, or whatever these different markers are in our lives. They're general patterns, yeah. So we're looking at the patterns. We aren't looking for an essential personality or thingness to ourselves. So how might it be helpful to have a sense of our relative sense of faith, yeah, of saddha? So just as a general introduction to the Buddhist concept of faith, the most useful way of thinking about this that I've found is having faith. So in Buddhism, what it means to have faith is to believe two things, which can boil down to just one thing. That is, you believe it is possible to abandon unwholesome qualities, and two, it is possible to cultivate wholesome qualities. And boiling those down into one, it is possible to change the mind. That's basically the sole article of faith that we take as our primary hypothesis. Another kind of tandem hypothesis which is useful is that it is possible to put an end to greed, anger, and delusion. That is a bit more of a stretch for some people, but it's a beautiful belief, yeah. It is totally possible to rid the mind of all anger. It's possible through introspection, from knowing my mind states, paying attention to mind states, and inclining the mind away from anger to eventually reach a state where anger no longer arises at all, and to reach a state that is completely non-retrogressive. So you eventually will reach a point where there's no longer any anger in the mind, and that stays. You're no longer subject to anger, and that's an article of faith. So yeah, take inventory. To what extent do you believe that it is possible to change the mind? And what extent do you believe that it is possible to get rid of greed and anger and delusion? So chances are all of us, just as the weather pattern in Chicago, there are outer limits. Yeah, so it's pretty much probably for the last several thousand years, it has not snowed in the middle of Chicago in the beginning of August. Yeah, so we've got these parameters. So you know that for yourself, the extent of my faith is on the low end of things. Yeah, I say whatever your downtime of the day. For me, my mind is at its kind of most sluggish in the evening. But even when the mind is at its most sluggish, if I ask myself this question, do I believe that it's possible to cultivate wholesome mind states? I'll say, yeah, I do believe that. And there are times when the faith faculty is really at a quite devoted level. Yeah, so I can pretty much, bow anytime that the heart goes in that direction, and yeah, I can give greater or lesser degree of fervor into my my faith faculty. And you should know this for yourself. To what extent is faith a strength? Is faith a bala? Is faith a faculty for you? And why this can be useful in meditation, because if you know that you've got a strong sense of faith, then you can use that as an antidote to various hindrances in meditation. So slothfulness or laziness comes up in the mind. I don't want to meditate. You can remember, actually, I've got that faith faculty. I've got this strength of faith. I've been working the faith muscle for these years. I can think of the Buddha. Yeah, the Buddha put forth effort. He was one who put forth effort. And I can do that too. And if your faith faculty is strong, then just thinking that much, imagining the Buddha can help you alleviate your drowsiness. In daily life, you can look, if you have a strong faith faculty, then play up to that. Organize your life, organize your house in such a way that your faith faculty increases, your strength of faith gets even more strong. Put Buddha statues around your house, and give yourself time for meditation and thinking about the Buddha, of chanting, if you've got this strength. And if you notice that you do have this faith faculty, then it can help your relationships with others, or it can guide your calendar for who you spend time with. If you care about your faith in Buddhism, you care about this belief, and you see that belief is something which can be trained in, and it's something which ebbs and flows and goes up and down, and you think that it's useful and valuable to get stronger in this, then you might want to spend your time with people who have intelligent faith in the teachings of the Buddha. So very practical. Know where you're at, and if you see that it is a strength, then put in the conditions for making it stronger. The second quality, or the domain of self-knowledge spoken of by the Buddha in this discourse, is sila, or one's virtue. So what is your sense of virtue, or what is the range? What are the general weather patterns of your virtue? How do they change throughout the day? When is your virtue at its strongest? When is your willpower at its strongest? When are you able to follow along with your precepts most easily? And when is it most difficult? So throughout a day, maybe your devotion to keeping the seventh precept, if you're taking on, the sixth precept of not eating afternoon, if you're trying to keep the uposta precepts and you're doing that, it's easy maybe just after the meal. You're satisfied. There's no pull. My strength of this vow is strong, but what happens maybe at 6 o'clock at night when you're used to eating some food? At that time, your capacity for that particular precept is perhaps at a weak point. So knowing that, and knowing the range and the spectrum of your faith, your virtue strength, is useful in meditation. One way that virtue manifests in our life is just our ability to say we're going to do something and then to do it. So our meditation, our ability to say, I'm going to meditate for half an hour today, or I'm going to meditate for an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, and then our capacity for following through with that's an aspect of virtue. So you can notice and measure your strength of virtue by seeing your capacity for this determination. And if you have strength of virtue, that also manifests as determination. So you're sitting meditation and you think, oh God, the alarm hasn't gone off, but I still got, I've got some amount of time, but I really want to get up. I want to check my phone, whatever it is. But your truthfulness, your determination, truth is an aspect of virtue. And you say, actually, no, I put forth this determination. I'm going to sit for half an hour, and you do it. And when you recollect your truth parami, your truth perfection, then it can give you more strength to then complete that determination. In daily life, you really do want to be recollecting and knowing what your strengths are, and knowing where your virtue is tested and where it's not. So if you are wanting to not eat afternoon, then it might be a good idea to know that your virtue is weak or strong, to what extent, and then to not go to the kitchen, to not go to town in the evening. And when you're relating to other people, yeah, if you're trying to stop smoking, trying to stop drinking, then knowing how strong or weak you are in this measure is exceedingly important. If you're not strong in your capacity to say, I'm not going to drink alcohol, then you don't want to go anywhere near your drinking buddies. There's the quality of learning, or sutta, S-U-T-A, single T. And this has implications. Knowing yourself, knowing your how learned you are is practically beneficial in your meditation when a problem comes up and a hindrance comes up and you think, oh, what do I do when anxiety comes up? And you remember, oh yeah, I remember the teachings of the Buddha that he said, yeah, when the mind is anxious, then I want to focus on the element of calm. There is an aspect of the mind that is calm right now, and I can give attention to that. That's what the Buddha said. I remember that. I remember the teachings. And so that's where knowing your own capacity for, the extent that you've learned the Buddha's teachings proves helpful. In daily life, if you notice that you don't know the teachings very well, you can listen to more. You can listen to podcasts or go on YouTube or just spend your time reading. And if you see that there's a dearth or a deficiency in your understanding of the discourses, you can fill that up. And when you relate to people, other people, you can relate to people who have more learning than you in this respect. And there's always someone who has more learning than you. The next quality is generosity. Yeah, so where are you on the spectrum of generosity? So you can think of this both, your own willingness. When am I most able to give up the thing that I'm clinging to? When am I most able to give gifts to other people? And when am I at my most stingy? And with all of these intelligence, you can compare it outwardly. But again, I am a weather pattern, and you are a weather pattern. And this person who I think is a paragon of generosity, is the exemplar of giving, they're also a weather pattern. So they also fluctuate. There's no self in them, but recollecting other people's capacity to give can help us in our meditation. It can brighten the mind in our daily life. It can help us to give when we're feeling miserly, and we can choose who we hang out with based on seeing the beauty in other people's capacity for sharing and generosity. The next two qualities of knowing the extent of one's wisdom or discernment, one's paññā and one's eloquence or patibbana. These are helpful for meditation because they help us, again, find ways out of the difficulties that we're encountering in meditation. Or if you're not experiencing difficulties in meditation, then knowing that your capacity for incisive discernment is strong, or your capacity for clear seeing is such, then you can tap into that at an instant in your meditation. So one aspect of discernment or of paññā is present moment awareness and attention and non-tilting in any direction, just being fully balanced in the present moment. And when you remember, oh yeah, I can actually do that to greater or lesser extent in the present moment, I can tune into the present moment and be here now, then when you remember to do it, then you can do it. And recollecting this capacity throughout the day is useful when you're by yourself and when you're with others, and more associating with people who also have developed the weather front of discernment and eloquence, then you'll grow in these things. There's a beautiful simile of one walking through a very dense fog. So if you've ever lived somewhere where fog, or even there's in very cold climates, there's what's called pogonip, which is it's a dense cloud of basically water vapor, which is just ready to turn to ice as soon as it has something to attach to. So when you're walking through fog or walking through pogonip, you might not necessarily realize it, especially with fog, but after you've been walking through this for a while, you get out of the fog or you get out of the pogonip and you look down at your clothes and, God, I'm damp. Or with the freezing atmosphere, oh gosh, I'm actually, there are crystals, there are ice crystals on my clothing, and you don't notice it perhaps as you're walking through it, but there is change happening to your clothing and to your body. And it's similar with the people who you hang out with. If you hang out with wise people, then even though you don't realize it, if you're open to it, you'll be absorbing some of that wisdom. So just to summarize, this aspect of intelligence that we're looking at today is intrapersonal intelligence, knowing the extent of your faith, knowing the extent of your virtue, knowing the extent of your learning or your study, knowing the extent of your generosity, of your wisdom, and of your clarity of speech. These are things which the Buddha praised as being conducive and supportive of growth in the Dhamma. So we all want to pay attention to this and learn more about ourselves and see how this self-knowledge, this knowing oneself, can have practical benefits in multiple aspects of our lives. So leave the talk there and open it up to questions. Okay, we have someone tuning in from Ireland. That's nice to see. Yeah, last week we were talking about knowing the goal, which is the second of those 7 types of intelligence, or I think we translated it as intuitive intelligence or interpretive intelligence, and basically atta, A-T-T-H-A, so knowing the goal. And in that context, there was a really beautiful poem which we discussed, which was by an Irish poet. It was basically, it was an Irish pilgrim who journeyed to Rome, and the poem, I'll have to paraphrase now, but to go to Rome, long the journey, little the reward. If you don't take him with you, you won't find him there. So just a beautiful, beautiful sentiment about, knowing the goal in the present moment and knowing our higher goal and merging those two along the whole of the path. So here we have a question. So, what a helpful way to investigate the interior world. So different from Western psychology. No questions, just a lot of encouragement. Yeah, it is. It is a helpful way to encourage and examine the interior introspection. I think it is possible for people who are new to Buddhism, when you hear these teachings of not self, of anatta, to almost belittle like self-knowledge and think, talking about self-knowledge, I mean, that's just provisional. That's just thinking about things in a small view. There is no self, and you just realize that there's no self, and that's the end of the story. But what you can see is, for people who perhaps have a underdeveloped sense of self-knowledge, is this what's called spiritual bypassing. Yeah, so you see this a lot at monasteries and meditation centers, where people just are very confident in their understanding of the Dhamma, but are very unaware of their own shortcomings. And one benefit of focusing on the self-knowledge is that it's humbling. Yeah, you don't try to prop up a false sense of self, because you know and you investigate and you allow and you realize that there are all these different strengths and weaknesses, and my capacity for generosity changes. And you see that, yeah, there are times when I am really selfish. And when you acknowledge that, there are times when I am really stupid. Then understanding that and allowing that that is the case can undercut the sense of hubris, which is a pitfall on the path. As we grow in Dhamma, we actually grow in all of these things. Once you start seeing that you can improve in these different realms of your life, you can become more generous, you can become stronger in your sense of virtue and in your faith, and you do start growing in these. So again, weather pattern, up and down, up and down, up and down, but there is a gradual improvement, a gradual upward shift. So the base rate is gradually increasing. But you are up for a fall if you start taking that higher base rate as any indication of a permanent self. So you want to be humble about this spiritual path. So next question: how can one balance generosity, especially with one's time, in cultivating good Dharma friends? These seem at times at odds with each other, if I take to heart being a good Dhamma friend myself. So actually, maybe how I might reframe this question is, so balancing generosity of time with others and perhaps the question is asking how to balance generosity of time with anyone versus actually cultivating good Dharma friendships. So if one is basically trying to cultivate a sense of generosity, and please correct me if I'm misunderstanding the question, but there is a possible hindrance on one's path to cultivating generosity or cultivating spiritual friendships if one thinks, I should give my time to anyone who asks for it. So anyone I see, I should just give up all my time to them, and that's cultivating generosity. And then the rub, or where that is perhaps in conflict with cultivating good friendships, is that not everybody who asks for your time, explicitly or implicitly, is necessarily a good friend. And this is a great question. So how do you cultivate generosity of time towards people who you don't want to be associating with? How do you be generous with your time when the fool or someone who's very foolish comes and is wanting to chit chat about this or that that you don't really have interest in? So somebody wants to come up and talk about politics and express their views, and not just express their views, but kind of spray you with their views. It's discernment to realize, okay, right now this person is, if they are, just blathering on without a clear purpose, then right now this person is not a spiritual friend, and they're not someone who I want to associate with. You can realize that, but you can still practice generosity with an internal intention. So time is finite. Yeah. In one of the future talks, we'll discuss Attaññū, or temporal intelligence, be intelligent with how you spend your time. And life is short. Yeah. The day is short. There's only so much time that we can give to our pursuits and our friendships and the people who we meet. And I think that it is a unhelpful ideal to think, I will always give myself up to whoever wants my time. You hear people praising, especially in like a modern American context, oh yeah, that guy, he's just so great. He just always gives his time to whoever wants it. Yeah. Whoever comes up, he'll just be fully present with you all the time. And it's a dangerous ideal because there's elements of usefulness within it, but on a whole, it's a bit misleading. Yeah. Your life is only so long. I only have so many minutes in an hour, hours in a day. And I do want to be cultivating my friendships with the people who are most important in my life, and the people who I find are the most wise. And if I'm getting, tons of email from these people who are not that important to me, or different voices which are calling for my attention, which I don't want to intelligently give my life to and my time to, then think of generosity in a different way. Yeah, not generosity, I'm going to relinquish my time to whoever asks for it, but I'm going to be generous in my intention of loving kindness. Person comes to me, talking about this or that view, or spraying all this anger and whatnot to me. My generosity at this moment is my generous intention, may you be well. But at the same time, I'm generous to myself, saying, Kovilo, I'm going to give you time alone. I'm going to give you time away from this person. Yeah. So I'm going to leave this situation with a heart of loving kindness. So with a generous heart that says, I want this blabberer, I want this angry person to be happy, but I also want myself to be happy. I'm going to generously exit myself from this situation. So yeah, be smart about your time. Give your time to people to the extent that you can. I mean, you don't want to be, to just ignore someone or totally cut someone off in a mean way is not cultivating the path, but to, with a heart of metta, acknowledge that there's only so much time in the day, and then to lean towards the people who you want to be like, and to lean away from the people and the actions that you don't want to be like, is generosity yourself. So great question. Great question. Thank you. Yeah, so just a further follow-up. So the question is, how do you do this kindly? how do you exit from a conversation kindly? And so there are two things here, yeah? Skillfulness and wholesomeness. And wholesomeness is kamma. So this is what's kusala, and this is your inner intention. And that's really what's most important on a kamic, a Buddhist level. Yeah, so how do you do that? Is you purify your intentions of loving kindness. Yeah, you can almost laugh at it. Yeah, I have loving kindness even as I can say, this person talking to me right now about who knows what, this person, expounding their view on the best cooking techniques for making delicious meatballs. With loving kindness, I can say, I've got some study I want to do in my mind. I've got some study I want to do. Loving kindness for you. And then, skillfulness is the second quality. And that just takes time and study. Yeah. Study people who are able to exit situations. Yeah. So figure out your exit strategies. This is an aspect of skillfulness and doesn't have to do with the ethical quality of your intention. Your brother-in-law gives you a call and says, "Ma, ma, 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 ma," and you can hear it and have two voices, two things going on in your mind. One is the intelligent voice that says, this is not helpful, either for me or for them. And at the same time, have a heart of loving kindness that says, I wish this person well, and a heart of loving kindness for yourself. I don't want to continue fueling this, either for them or for me. And then now is the time when the verbal action comes into it and says, friend, oftentimes the situations which are hard to get out of are hard because the other person is insensitive. They don't know themselves. They don't know other people. They aren't getting the bodily cues, the verbal cues that you want to get out of the situation. And that right there is a hint that you don't want to be associating with that person if they're insensitive to your wanting to get away. But once you get a spike into their conversation, they've got their flow of basically just spouting their own views. Finally say, I'm sorry. I really have to admit that it's kind of painful to hear you go on and on like this. And I apologize, but that's just my own capacity. And you're my brother-in-law, but I just don't find this helpful. And I have some other things that I really need to do. And if you wanted to talk about something else, that's great. If you want to talk about your meditation, I'd love that. Or if you wanted to hear about, how my meditation is going, then I'd love to talk about that with you. Or you want to discuss discourses, unlikely, but then that would be great. But if not, then I have to admit that I've got other things to do. So, I don't mean any offense, and you see your own intention clearly. There is metta, but prioritizing getting out, knowing the escape. So just some more thoughts. Again, thank you for these questions, because as monks and practitioners, I think this is something which all of us have to look at. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and I wish everybody the best. Hope you have all a great weekend, and maybe see you next weekend. Thyself and I've changed our schedule, so we're giving talks rather than on Monday evenings, on Wednesday evenings. So Wednesday evening at 6 o'clock, there is on this YouTube channel a live stream. I believe I'll be discussing Attaññū, so knowing the measure, or quantitative intelligence, on Wednesday at 6, and then at 6:45 there's a Zoom meeting, kind of follow up for Q&A. So wish everybody well, and see you later.